Hello and welcome to another Blender Know-How tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to get a little bit more into Python and some of the different things that you can do within it. So first off, let's go ahead and open up make sure you start a new file. Let's create a new text file and let's just import bpy as, oh, that's actually brings me up. I was just about to do something that I hadn't even talked about yet. So I'm going to turn on this highlighting so that it changes colors. So import bpy, that will do the main thing that we want to do. It'll import the Blender Python scripts or the libraries. But as you can see, like for instance, let's just delete this cube, add a new one. So we can see that down here. So this one right here, the bottom one. If we copy and paste that, whoops, if we copy and paste that in here, we can see that there's like this bpy.ops and .mesh.primitiveCube. We actually, I mean, for Blender, this is pretty small already, bpy. For other programs, sometimes it's kind of lengthy. You can actually change this to as whatever you want to name it. You could actually as Blender know-how. Now, if I change this, it should run with that now. Yeah, so it did. I now have two cubes. If I run it with no cube, boom, a cube appears. So that's pretty sweet. We can actually name this whatever we want so that we can program using words that we have told Python to use or Blender. In this instance, it's pretty synonymous. They are different. Python is completely separate from Blender, actually. Blender just recognizes and understands Python, much like languages in real life. Some people understand different languages, and Blender just happens to understand Python, much like other 3D software. So another thing that I want to look into is this idea of variables. I don't know how much you know about scripting or languages for the computer, but variables are very common. And within Python, you can actually, it's really easy to implement. So for instance, we have this one. This is kind of a variable that we're using here. But let's create a new variable. Let's just name this Blender variable. And I'm going to just make it equal to something that we want, like some kind of data. Generally, there's like a few different types of data that we can use, like ints, which are integers. There's strings, which are words, or even it could even be a character, but a character, at least one character. But it's generally more than one character put together. There are characters, which is just a single character. There's honestly quite a few different types of data that we can put in here. Let's just plug in 5. That's pretty easy. And in Python, we don't have to have any kind of thing that ends our lines. It's just based off of lines and spacing. So that's kind of nice. Now let's call a function that is determined within Python called the print. And let's print Blender var. And if you put it inside the parentheses, it knows exactly what you want to print. You can't put that on the outside. If you do it like this, whoops. If you do it like this, will not work. Just make sure that whatever you want to print is on the inside of the parentheses, much like this. Primitive cube add parentheses. All the data goes inside, and then it can interact with the function. Now let's run this script, and we can see down here, we run the script. Let's actually delete this cube, just to make it a little bit easier. We can actually, it might even be easier. Let's copy this. I'm gonna type it down here in the console. So I'm gonna do Blender var equals 5. So now you can see it didn't really do anything. It's because it just stored the integer, or the int, 5 into Blender var. Now let's go ahead and print Blender var. Oops. If you happen to enter down and it does the 3 dots, just finish it. It's just saying that you haven't finished what you're doing. So I did that, and it prints out 5. So now forever, until I change it, Blender var on my computer, until I tell it otherwise, is 5. We can always change that now. So Blender variable equals 6. Let's print Blender var, and now it's 6. Now why is this useful? Well, in the simplest terms, this is useful for this situation right here. Blender variable, let's change this from Blender variable or Blender var to size, or size of cube. Now we have this variable, which equals 5. Let's change this to size of cube. Oops, gotta make sure it's the same. Now, if I run the script, this cube is now 5 units. And I can just change this, 3 or 10. And boom, we have a bigger cube. So this is kind of an interesting concept to maybe wrap your head around. Any of these can be changed for variables. True or false, these are Boolean logic. We can create is true equals false. So, or let's make one that makes a little bit more sense. Maybe is aligned equals false. And in Python, if it's false or true, it has to be a capital T or capital F at the beginning. Just make sure, or else it won't recognize it as actually true or false. It'll recognize it as a string or of some other character type. So now we have is aligned. We could actually plug this in here for view align. We could just say is aligned. And then if we have thousands of lines of code, whenever we change this one thing to true, this is now changed to true. If we change this to false, this runs and is now false. And you can even see down here in our what's being executed. The first time we ran it, it was true, and then when we change it, it's false. And I hope you've learned something in this tutorial. If you have, go ahead and post some things you've learned, or even post in the comments questions that you might have about scripting in Blender. Also, check out some more videos. I'm hopefully going to unroll a few more of these kinds to get you more acquainted with Blender and Python now within scripting. And I hope that you've learned something, and stay tuned for more.